We're all clear, but there'll be more. Echo 7, how's the transmission?
I just bypassed security. Transferring to R10 now.
Echo 2, we've got company. Let's make this quick.
Copy, Echo 9. R10, get ready for transmission. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hoth Transmissions. Before we get into today's topic, we are going to be discussing two things. One, Skeleton Crew, which is going to be releasing on December 3rd, and then also the cancellation of the Acolyte. So let us go ahead and talk about Skeleton Crew, because the trailer just dropped and it looks not very Star Warsy, but very sci-fi, which, other than the space suburbs, I think the rest of the trailer looked pretty fun.
I have my views on it, which involves Jedi and a certain order that should still be happening. Kill the kids. No, don't kill the
kids. Gotcha. Well, I mean, the kids aren't Jedi, as far as we know. We know Jude Law is.
Yeah, I'm all sort of joking aside about that. I don't know where I stand with this, because obviously it's just a trailer. We've not seen anything else. We know basically nothing.
I think all we know is that it takes place during Mandalorian.
Yeah, it is very sort of generic sci-fi instead of Star Wars, and given the next topic that we're going to talk about and the cancellation of it, I don't know if that's good or bad.
Most of the discussion around it online has been so far about the fact that if it's like about if it's a kids show or not. And that is, for me also, just like Sam, that's the least of my concerns, because we have seen already one show being cancelled, and Skeleton Crew is also completely going to be setting up new characters, new lines, and I would like to question if we need that or not, if that is going to bring any enrichment into the universe or not. Other than that, I have basically decided that I have zero expectations. If it's going to be good, then great, but I think they really need to pace themselves and not put out this much content, because the quality is getting worse and worse. And everybody who's listened to the previous episodes about the Acolyte knows that I bonded with that show, and now I'm disappointed. I'm sad. So I don't want to go through that again with the Skeleton Crew.
Like, I think the trailer was like only a minute and a half, and so for me, like, I think the cinematography looks like kind of almost as well done as Andor did, as far as like production value. And like I said, this one kind of reminds me more of kind of like a sci-fi adventure, not really a Star Wars adventure. I think the only thing that really ties it to Star Wars is they find, I guess, a abandoned Jedi temple, and then we see the Force a little bit. So I'd like to see how that kind of develops more into it. I do think it's going to be kind of more obviously a children's show, because it's about a group of kids that get lost and run into a Jedi and they go on some adventure. But it kind of gives me like your Earth to Echo vibe. I don't know if you guys saw that movie or anything, but I think it's got a lot of potential. I think it's going to be a lot better than Acolyte, but just from what I've seen so far, I'm kind of holding judgment on it. But I've seen other people kind of equate it to the Goonies, so it could be a fun adventure. Like, just because it's got kids in it doesn't mean it's necessarily like going to be like the Resistance cartoon,
which we don't talk about.
Yeah, we probably will never review that show. That show doesn't exist to us. It's so bad, so bad. I'd rather watch Acolyte over that.
I mean, there has been a lot of kids shows, kids shows in quotation marks in Star Wars that gave us incredible things like the Clone Wars, the Rebels, and so on. And yeah, we'll see. Just yeah, you are right. Just because the subject matter is kids does not mean it's a kids show. And even if it is, I mean, we've seen amazing kids shows both in Star Wars universe and outside of it. So why not? I just need it to not be a cash grab because I am slowly losing my patience.
See, because that's a very interesting point, because I remember back when The Last Jedi came out, right? It failed miserably. Like, fans did not agree. It was very split decision on the fandom, and you hear a lot more negativity about it than you do hear positivity. And we'll get into that when we get into the sequels. But Solo came out right after, and it did terribly just because of how The Last Jedi just kind of disappointed a lot of fans. Then you had Solo, which was a pretty decent movie. I'm going to say very underrated, but it came out and didn't get a lot of attention because a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm not ready for another disappointment." And I'm kind of feeling that's kind of how Skeleton Crew is going to be with the Acolyte. The Acolyte failed miserably. Oh, I would say miserably. No, yeah, I'd say miserably. The viewership in the Rotten Tomatoes score is pretty bad. And now we got Skeleton Crew that's following it. And because people are so disappointed with the Acolyte, they're going to expect the same thing out of Skeleton Crew. So I'm hoping it gets the viewership. I'm going to give it a shot, give it a try. But, I mean, we'll be covering it here. But I got high hopes for it. Any
Yeah.
other thoughts on it, or?
It's
No.
hard to say any other thoughts at the moment because there's so little information out there.
Information, yeah.
But I mean, on the thing failing side, like, we're going to talk about the Acolyte and everything, but Solo, I think we're at the point now with Star Wars that we was in with Marvel like 5 years ago, where it was just, let's push everything out at once, and people are bored of it. Like, I know the Acolyte has its own issues anyway, but like, do we really need sort of everything out at once? And we had, like, say, Solo sort of straight after The Last Jedi, and it does have that effect. So with Skeleton Crew, I'm interested to see it. Whether I like it is another question, because it might be another sort of Bad Batch-esque thing for me, which we all know how I feel about that one. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I am also thinking how it's going to be. I mean, the people are going to be skeptical just like we are, because even though I liked Acolyte and I think I mean, okay, my thoughts became worse and worse towards the end of the season, but I still did not think that show deserved to be canceled. I think there was a lot to save there, but whatever, it is what it is right now. But with that, I really don't want to invest my time and again connect and bond with characters if it's going to bomb again.
And just to go with Sam real quick, so this recording is real time, but the review of the topic that we'll be discussing today, which will be the Bad Batch, I think this is probably the third episode that we'll be in for the Bad Batch releasing. So you'll be learning about Sam's love for the series. So
Yeah.
So with that being
said, yeah.
Yeah, Sam loves Bad Batch and Force-sensitive children.
Spoiler alert. This is only episode 3.
So I guess then let's move on to the pretty big elephant in the room of the Acolyte. And God, to be honest, like, it's not something I thought we would properly be talking about so soon after the season's released. But
yeah,
like, it's gone, it's done, it's cancelled. You know, it's what it is.
I mean, they gave us the live action Darth Plagueis and then took it away. What's
But
gonna
they-
happen now?
So here's the thing: it's like you can still do things with that and not continue the Acolyte. They can get like
I
new directors,
know.
new writers, and go in a different direction, and not even pretend the Acolyte never existed.
Okay, here's a question, because obviously the Acolyte, now that we've seen the episodes, it shouldn't have been called the Acolyte, right? That's just that's the big point. Like, it could literally have had any other title and it would still be fine. Do you think that they will be bringing it back in a live action form, just with a different name, as a continuation, sort of like, you know, what you guys just said?
Something has to happen. Because no matter how much we pretend that Acolyte does not exist, it does not change the fact that it exists. It is canon.
Maybe.
It is there.
Maybe.
What are you gonna do?
Well, okay, so here's
No.
my thing is because like they canceled season 2, right? And they're taking all the merch off of the Disney Store website.
That
I've
is
seen
a point.
I've seen people show screenshots of going on to Disney Store and typing in the Acolyte, nothing being on there. But I went on there and 4 shirts came up. So, but all the merch that they had before is dwindling. So I jumped on Amazon. The Stranger's Mask, the Black Series one, went from I think like $150. Now it's selling for $99 on Amazon. So
What? It's going to sound stupid because merch-wise, I very rarely pay attention. But what merch did they actually have for the Acolyte? Apart from
like
the mask and everything.
Funko Pops, I think they had Black Series action figures, and then
They
the
had
mask.
Funko
They did
Pops?
TV shirts. Mm-hmm. They
Oh,
had one
That
of
is
your
important too.
Jedi beefcake.
And I mean, sorry, but like
Yeah.
it's missing. It is missing.
I'm-
I need beefcake and smoke show.
So I know they are taking it off the Disney like store, but you can definitely still find it over the internet, eBay, Amazon. Like, it's probably just going to be very limited quantity from here on out, and so that could be like valued later, I guess, for a failed TV show. But considering that they're trying to get rid of all the merch and stuff, like, I'm kind of wondering if they will cancel what this as canon.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, let's go back, what, 2-3 years when they started making this show.
Mm-hmm.
They filmed it within like the standard sort of 6 months or however long. It then was sat on a shelf for 2 years before it got released in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
At any point, they could have gone back and sort of sat with a group of people and just watched it, like a group of actual Star Wars fans that they've pulled off the street, like they did with, you know, or still do with movies. You know, they'll if in places, you know, if you're walking around, you might get lucky and get pulled into a theatre to watch a movie that's not finished yet, to sort of give criticism. They could have easily done that with this show, and
which I think they did because it has very high critic score, but I think it's down to like a 17% viewership score.
you see that's like that's just bad. I mean,
I think the thing that kind of sucks with critics now is like you do get these early critic people, but it's a political game now. It's no longer like, oh yeah, I'm going in. Okay, the audience will actually enjoy this, but it's more like money in the pockets. It's like, okay, well, we're trying to do this, so you go out and give good reviews to hype it up, so everybody will watch it, and then once it actually gets released, like, because I know a lot of people are like, okay, well, Disney's canceling the Acolyte season 2 because of all the fans that were complaining about it before the trailer dropped. It's like, no, it's really not about that. It's like, it kind of makes me laugh because like people like, if something fails, they like to blame it on race and people not liking wokeness and not for the actual value of the show. And people, I've never heard anybody complain anything about race or anything like that for the Acolyte. It's always been about acting, pacing, writing, like all the stuff that I didn't like. And
The creator.
people are, yeah, and people are like, well, if you don't like it, don't watch it. And for us, I mean, we're reviewing it, so we're watching it. But for fans that are just getting disappointed and actually stop watching, people are like, okay, well, if you don't like it, don't watch it. And then they don't watch it, and the viewership is the lowest out of any Star Wars project. And then now people are complaining because nobody watched it. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah,
catch
the
22.
problem
It's like,
is because people cannot just keep track of it anymore. It's the exact same thing that happened with Marvel. I
Mhm.
was for years, like I think until Thor: Love and Thunder, I was
Okay.
fully 100% up to date with every single show. I would watch them on the day that would come out, the movies the same, never skipped. After Love and Thunder, I lost track because just so many things popped up at the same time and this and that. I was just lost. And I think it's the exact same thing for Star Wars. And again, this is the big Disney machine behind it that
Mhm.
they just want to keep pushing product and everything. But I mean, it's for a lot of people, it's enough. For me, of course, because we were doing, I see, look, this, I have to be honest about this. If we were not doing this, I am also not sure if I would be so up to date with all of the shows. I feel the
Yeah.
responsibility that we do this, so I should be up to date. But if we weren't, I don't know. I can say that honestly.
There's a reason why she hasn't joined us for any of the Bad Batch season 3 discussions. She's not up to date.
Yes. Yeah.
But she's caught up on everything else. Bad Batch season 3 is the only thing, but I just had to make fun of you for that one.
But no,
But
I mean, Fluffy is 100% correct. You know,
Mhm.
like I said, you know, this was filmed ready to be released sort of 2 years ago. They could have released it before they started releasing everything else Star Warsy. You know, but they didn't. They sat on it for 2 years. They didn't bother to sort of re-look at it and think, oh, actually, is it good? I mean, you know, the simple fact that you've got after each episode the creator having to explain things on, like, you know, Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now is not a sign of a good show. You know, it should, things like that should be explained within the confines of the episode, not by the creator afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's not that the show failed because of what all the fans are accusing other fans of saying about it. It failed just because the quality just wasn't there. It had a lot of potential and it just didn't stick the landing.
Yeah.
I think there's a such thing as overproduction.
Well, look
And
at
that's
the first few episodes. You know, the graphics. It went from like top tier movie level down to
to
being
bad CGI.
yeah, to like a 4-year-old did it on my first tablet type thing.
Oh.
and this is coming from the guy that tried to be positive throughout the whole season. I was so positive, and then in all honesty, what did it for me was episode 7, the flashback that was not needed in episode 7.
Yeah, it's just the pacing and the writing.
Yeah.
I literally say, like, just like with the sequels, Kylo Ren carried those movies. I think Kamir carried the Acolyte, and he was barely in it. And I wouldn't mind them breaking off, and somehow Osha dies. We don't need her to come back. Like, just make up some excuse that Plagueis didn't like her and killed her. Learned what he needed and killed her off, and then do something with Kamir and Plagueis. I think that would be a more interesting story.
Kind of leading up to Palpatine being...
Yeah, which I'd be fine with them doing, like, kind of what they've been doing with Luke in, like, Rebels and everything. Maybe not so much the Kenobi level of it, but lead it up to Plagueis meeting Palpatine, and then end that story there, because we know where it goes from there.
Yeah.
I think it'd be. I think that would be a good angle to kind of redeem them bringing Darth Plagueis into the Acolyte and then not doing nothing with them.
Well, because it's like that Yoda reveal at the end of the last episode.
Oh, I got my thoughts on that. I just saw something funny. I don't know, but continue.
My heart broke all over again.
Sorry, I'm sorry, but it was so unnecessary to have Yoda just there. Like, we know that he would be there because of his age, but
yeah,
like we know it doesn't lead to anything, because we've got episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Like, we know Yoda's story as well as we know everyone else. So, like, having Yoda there in this thing where everything's a big secret and the Jedi are actually evil, Anakin was right, by the way. Again, it's down to the storytelling, the writing. Like, there's no need for it to have been the way that it was. Like, I know in sort of when we did episode 8, and we sort of did a recap of the full season and how we would have liked things to be, that kind of makes more sense than what we actually got, which makes it worse knowing that Disney sat on this for 2 years.
That has so much potential. And
yeah,
it's funny because you mentioned the Yoda thing. I'm sure everybody knows the group How It Should Have Ended.
Yeah.
And I was scrolling through TikTok, and they did one for How the Acolyte Should Have Ended. And it's Vanessa walking in, and you see Yoda's head, and she's like, Master Yoda, can I ask you something, or something like that? And then he's like, what do you mean? He's like, you're fired. He's like, you have this big conspiracy. It's like all the Jedi under your command, they're dead. So much potential Jedi killed, even the Wookiee. And grabs her lightsaber. She's like, you can keep your floppy lightsaber, and like throws it back at her. And he's like, you're fired. Get out of the Jedi Order. And the way you look at it is like, is she really a Jedi? If she's being that corrupt and kind of like hiding deaths of Jedi from the Council and doing her own little mission. Oh, my apprentice is still alive. Let me not tell anybody but this erased memory Jedi killer. And now she's my friend.
We will never know.
And I'm okay with that. Just write it off in some like story. It's like, oh, they all died. The council didn't like it. Her mission never got approved.
I think we're going to get a Tales of to bridge the gap.
Or comics or a book or something just to kind of close it. I know they're going to do something with it.
Yeah, I'm hoping Tales of, just simply because I don't want to have to go out and buy a comic book or a book. Like, if I want to...
And watch like a 15-minute story.
Yeah, like, all we need is a 15-minute story, like, you know, as we've had with the other Tales of episodes, where it's 15, 20
Tales
minutes.
Of the Acolyte.
Yeah, and it, you know, because it time jumps in each episode anyway, so we could have sort of Camilla with Osha and Plagueis and Osha dying, and then we could have sort of a time jump to Plagueis and Camilla training or something, generic sort of Star Wars stuff, and then we could have in the final one,
and then Plagueis comes and kills her.
Well, Plagueis meeting Palpatine and starting that sort of story.
I think you guys are being super optimistic, but I really enjoy that. But because from my perspective, has this ever happened before in something like Star Wars? Something came out and then got canceled, and we just had floating storylines and characters all over the place. And I mean, when things get canceled, there is never an effort. That rarely, like Brooklyn Nine-Nine came back. That's it. I
I'm
really
going to argue Firefly got canceled. They got a movie and I think some comics to kind of tie up the story.
Multiple comics, which is still going.
Yeah.
There's an after movie comic book now.
But I mean, Firefly by Disney.
But Firefly was actually good though.
Yeah, not to mention the other sort of popular Star franchise, but Star Trek Prodigy got cancelled by Paramount, and a load of people got together. They had a banner flying behind a plane in front of like the Netflix building saying, "Bring it back." Netflix brought it and bought the rights to it and brought it back. So,
and then Stargate Universe got canceled and they continued in comics.
So it is within the realms of possibilities that things.
But they weren't owned by Disney.
That's the point. They were not owned by Disney. Disney does not. If Disney cared enough about all of this, we would not have had a crazy time talking about Marvel and Star Wars getting destroyed piece by piece. I hope you guys are right, but I think it's just up in the air now, and they're gonna somehow bring. I think the Stranger, that line that's gone, we'll never see him again. But Plagueis has to somehow. But Plagueis also has a lot of literature. Like, why would they need that?
So that's why, so I'm gonna agree with you. Like, it seems like they're trying to bury it, especially with taking all the merch down and kind of just huge failure on Disney's part. And Disney doesn't like to fail, so they'll try and bury their failure. And with that being said, it's like I don't think that they're going to continue the story. I would like some closure to it, at least some mention, just so it's because I mean, it's been done. They can either come out and say that it was just an alternate reality, or they can literally just say it doesn't exist. It's like the Star Wars multiverse or something. Like, I don't know, the world between worlds. Like, they can finally do something with that. I know Filoni said it's not a time traveling thing, but they could literally just say, okay, like, yeah, we're in the world between worlds, and they can easily do a multiverse version of it and say, okay, this is looking through one window. This is what this person saw. It doesn't exist in our real timeline because it never happened. Like, they can easily go through that and not do any time traveling.
Yeah, we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, but just they are going to somehow, if they want to get one of the characters like Darth Plagueis into live action or any type of visual media, they're going to come up with an excuse, and they're not going to care about any of the storylines, what conflict it has with other material, this and that. It's just they're not going to care about it at all, which is something that I was like when I was watching Rogue One. Like, a lot of continuity errors when you look at Andor and so on. So it's like they're just gonna keep doing the same thing. And since this is the thing that we love, we're just gonna keep watching it, and we're just gonna keep being like, no, why? But yeah, I'm being super upsetting about this. Sorry.
You're being me.
Yeah, I am.
Which is weird. I don't like this.
Yeah, no, Sam and I are like trying to give like possibilities and hoping Disney listens to us. Is like, here's some good story ideas you can do. But I know fans want Darth Plagueis, and I think this was their way to try and bring Darth Plagueis in, and they can easily move on with Darth Plagueis and forget the whole Acolyte story. Like they could easily do a time jump, and they can mention, oh yeah, Chimera and Osha, they failed, they got killed off. Okay, new story, and
Yeah,
then
that's
Acolyte's done.
if it's going to
Like,
happen, it's going to happen like that. They're not going to try
mhm.
to keep any type of continuity or pay any attention to this. They're just going to be
I
like,
mean,
okay, yeah, that was way, way, way in the past. Like, I mean, Plagueis lived for however many years, so let's just.
they did that with Cara Dune. That's
Yeah,
like a perfect example.
yeah, they
Well,
killed her off screen, and that was that.
Yep.
yeah, and then moved
I
on.
mean, they canceled her show. They killed her off screen. Oh, that's the thing. Like, I wish there was a way that like they saw this failure. I mean, to be fair, some of the things I will really, really miss, like the characters.
Two
Like
characters in
two
particular.
characters. Like Renestra's lightsaber and her like fighting technique I would have loved to see. Or the Wookiee Jedi if he actually lived. Like there were so many great things, but in total it made a very bad show.
Yeah, I think
So no surprise it got canceled.
yeah, the one thing that they should have really done from the start was show Plagueis. So that big reveal in the last episode that could have been done in the first episode, and
But
we could have followed that story just to make
yeah,
it better.
Like I
but that
said,
would
get rid of
not.
Osha and May, and just do if they just did Chimera as the acolyte with Plagueis, and have him tied to Vernestra and Soul,
Yeah,
and instead of having three different stories going on at the same time, they could just tie it down into one and make a very interesting story.
yeah,
And fans would have gotten Darth Plagueis.
Yeah.
yeah,
And when we're talking about this like episode by episode, it feels really formulaic. It feels really like, oh, okay, so they got an 8 episode season, very much like Game of Thrones, and then they are like, oh, let's finish with like a cliffhanger that will bring people back. Oh, let's have like an epic battle in the 6th and 7th. We go a little down, we calm down, and then in the 8th we push up the stakes again. It's like it sounds like this person who wrote the show literally took a screenwriting class, took a look at the 5 big shows of the past 2 decades and just tried to put it like into that mold, and it did not work.
I mean,
Sadly. So
yeah, this is sort of coming from the people that also didn't watch Star Wars at all until they got the job. And we've said it so many times while recording The Acolyte that there's so many references to Revenge of the Sith, and they kind of played too heavy into that, or
Mm-hmm.
the prequel trilogy as a whole. And looking back at it now, even for me, Mr. Positive about it up until sort of the later episodes in the season,
mhm.
I don't need to see the things that I've already seen, like the miraculous conception of a child, or in this case, the twins. Like, I don't care about that as much as I would love to. I've seen it before. We've had it with Anakin. We had like 9 movies with his family story. I don't need to see the same thing in an 8 episode season. That great, it's cool, it can happen with other people, happy days, but we don't need it. It could have literally been it. it is almost like it's an alternate reality version of the prequel trilogy.
Wow, we destroyed the show even worse. That we
Yeah.
I have a note here that your last positive day was on the 8th of June. That's a while ago.
I mean, yeah, but I can be positive. Again, just
I mean, I think we were in the beginning.
yeah.
Fluffy was a negative one this time.
That is the thing, is that with the Acolyte, I was so positive about it. Take away the sort of occasional 4-year-old graphics or 4-year-old designed graphics. It had so much promise. Premise, completely different question. Promise was good, and unfortunately, like it missed the mark. And now, as fans of it that have seen the whole thing, we kind of can process it, and knowing that Disney has cancelled it officially, it adds to it that what we were saying towards the end is essentially how everybody was feeling. Otherwise, they would have, if they had so much faith in it, they wouldn't have cancelled it. They would have done a second season and then let it die. But they've literally just killed it off, getting rid of all the merch off the Disney store. I mean, I'm going to London tomorrow, just sidetracking, and there's a big Disney store there. So I'm tempted to go in and just see if they've got anything physically on the shelves.
I was just looking at the Funko Pops, and they are not. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any physically, because I haven't. And when I try to look at it on Amazon to order it, they were supposed to be delivered at the end of October. So they might even cancel the production of that and do a limited release and everything.
I don't.
They're not even up for sale.
Funko Pops are different though, because they'll literally make anything.
Yeah, I know.
So
I know.
they might still have that license. It's just
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a hard one to sort of see where the merch side of it goes.
Yeah,
But I
there
think
are.
Funko Pops is going to be it.
Yeah, there are 4 models that you can find. It's Chimere, Osha, Yord, and Basil. Which is a very weird selection.
The first
But yeah.
3 I get.
But Basil? Really?
Yeah.
That's what I saw on Amazon. I will be searching because I love collecting them. I really want to know what's going to happen with that, because you're right, they would do anything, but I don't know if they would go all in for a show that is already canceled before the Funko even came out.
All right. So for this episode that we're doing today, which will be Bad Batch Season 3, I forget which episode. Well, I'm sure I say it in the other recording, but Fluffy will be taking her lead on this one. So because this is recorded in the future, whereas today's episode was done in the past. A little bit of time travel here, so it's fun. So
This is worse than the MCU timeline.
Hey, but it makes sense. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hoth Transmissions. Today we will be discussing Bad Batch Season 3, Episodes 1 and 3. And we kept these ones together because we kind of figured they worked kind of as an arc. They kind of worked better together. So we're going to keep them together just because it's going to be a lot of fun. I have noticed that animation actually does continue to get better in the Bad Batch Season 3. I don't know if you kind of noticed the upgrade.
Yeah, it kind of looks cleaner and crisper. I don't know
And
if that I don't know if that's kind of like the same thought that you was having, but
no,
to me,
that's exactly what I was thinking.
yeah,
And the colors are a little bit more deeper.
yes, yeah,
And that probably goes along with why it looks better with the animation.
yeah,
But it's kind of interesting that they start out with Hemlock and a downed trooper shuttle. And when I first saw it, I was like, okay, this is cool. They're getting downed on their own planet, whatever, cool. And I was like, why would they include that? And later on, we found out why. So it does play a big role later on in the story. But I'm continuing to like Hemlock. He is such a jerk. He is so cold and menacing, but I really like how well they're doing his character.
yeah. There's something about him that is just so chilling. I think it's the way that the lines are delivered, that there's no emotion in it whatsoever. And I know that we mentioned this sort of in the last one, the episode 2, where you've got more emotion in sort of the good guys, but this is on a whole other level of coldness.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. I think it has to go with how well they deliver the lines. And it just makes you want to hate this guy so much.
Yeah.
Because you can see he's just completely heartless. He doesn't care about anything. Like he's like full on empire. Let's do this.
Yeah, he's just a word that I won't say.
That's fair
But
enough.
no, I mean the lines that he does, the lines that he delivers are just so chilling. Like his whole character is just, like I said, just chilling.
Yeah, because we saw him a little bit in last season, and he comes off a lot darker this time. And I do like how they are changing the series. It's kind of maturing a little bit. Like these these first 3 episodes seem a little bit darker than what we're used to in previous seasons.
Yeah, but I think as well it kind of ties in with how the season has developed, and what it's going to develop into. Which again, if we've got time at the end, I'd like to tell you my theory about what's going to happen to all the characters and how the finale will play out. But it is definitely darker, and I think it's because there's more at stake as well now. Like, Omega's been captured. Obviously, she's going to need to escape somehow, and it sets the tone for the whole season.
Yeah, like is she gonna escape or is she gonna get help? Well, that's the thing. And who's gonna help her? Is it gonna be Hunter and Wrecker, or is she gonna somehow free Crosshair? And is he gonna be the one that's gonna get them out? And I do have to say, like, I know we discussed in the last episode about how Omega is always calling upon Hunter and Wrecker. These 2 episodes, I see a little bit more development where she knows she's by herself, and she's the one going down to Crosshair and saying, "We're gonna get out of here. We're gonna get out of here." Like she's kind of changed her dependency role into almost becoming the leader. It's like, okay, I'm no longer relying on anybody. Now everybody's relying on me.
Yeah, I think as much as I did not like Omega in seasons 1 and 2, the time jump, because there is a visible time jump, because you can sort of see by the length of her hair. I think she's had enough development in the first and third episodes of this season for me to be, actually, you know what, she is a unique character now. And it's like we said with Hunter and Wrecker, we don't normally see those two characters together by themselves. So to have Omega and Crosshair interacting in a way that they're not trying to kill each other, or Crosshair's not trying to kill Omega, at least, it does add that extra layer of character now.
I'm gonna say I've always seen these two as the closer of the group. Going
Really?
back to season 1, Omega was always trying to appeal to Crosshair. Even when they first got captured, he's already made up his mind, and he tells her, it's like, oh yeah, I've already had the chip taken out, but this is my decision. And she's still trying to convince him, it's like, come with us. And then even at the end, when Crosshair is forced to work with them, Omega is constantly trying to help. And I think Omega is kind of Crosshair's weakness. Is like Crosshair has a connection to her, but he's also got this purpose that he feels he needs to fulfill. And we see a different Crosshair in each season. First season, all about Empire. Season 2, he kind of interacts with Cody, and then he starts to see things, and then he starts to see that he's not being treated as important as he should be, and kind of seeing that he's expendable, and starts to question things. And in this season, you can kind of see that he's having that internal struggle. This is the consequence that I did for fulfilling my purpose, and good soldiers follow orders. And we're starting to see his whole character change, and he's no longer fighting against what he thinks he should be, but now giving himself into what he really thinks are his morals or whatnot. I don't know if you caught any of that.
No, I do like that, and because I've been sort of watching Crosshair's development throughout the 3 seasons, or 2 seasons and the 2 episodes that he's in so far. And you are correct. He does have a different sort of persona in each season, depending on what the situation is. But
and especially when Omega's around.
Yeah.
Because he treats her differently than everybody else.
He treats her like an individual, just another annoyance. And
however, episode 3 is the first time he actually says her name in the entire series.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's never said her name once until this season.
I have honestly not picked up on that, and I'm glad you told me that, because as soon as all the seasons out, I'm just gonna spend a day watching all of it, or make a weekend of it and watch all 3 seasons at once. But I think with Crosshair, he's, especially in sort of episode 1, he's kind of resigned himself to being helpless as well. It was his decision that got him where he is, and he's now having to live with that. And then Omega's come along, and she's kind of trying to, it came across to me like she's trying to pick him back up. And I don't know whether it was trying to sort of prove that she's not just an annoyance, and finally it's sort of coming through, or maybe just how it was written made me appreciate, and I can't believe I'm saying this, appreciate Omega for the character that she is now.
Yeah, because Crosshair is, you can kind of see he's completely hopeless, and he believes the fate that he has now is what he deserves.
Yeah, he's in his mind, he's done. He's happy to just live in that prison and die there, essentially.
He's given up, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't think there's a way out. Like, he's like, we're in this facility. Nobody knows where it's at. It's hidden. And while we have Omega Free, who's a sympathizer for him, she's just a little girl. What is she going to do? Like, she can sneak out herself because she's small enough, but to pull a whole prison heist, she's just kind of not thinking it's very unlikely because she hasn't been trained the way that he's been trained or the rest of his team has. And so he's just kind of lost hope. He's just kind of chilling there. He's like, I'm doomed.
Yeah.
Almost hear 3PO talking, we're doomed. But
yeah, I mean,
you did mention that you weren't sure how much time has passed, but if you see on Omega's cell wall, she's got 21 tallies. So I'm assuming 21 days.
Yeah, I thought it would be longer just because of how different her hair looks between sort of the end of season 2 and now. It just seems a bit too long for it to be just 21 days. But
no, I'm mistaken. It started at 21 days and ends around day 164. So about half a year.
That would make more sense. Which again sort of would explain Crosshair's sort of lack of belief that he's getting out alive.
164 days in that boring cell. Like, yeah, it's going to instill a lot of depression there.
But I mean, but then we've got Emery. Is that, I can't remember how it's pronounced. I think it is
Emery Carr.
Yeah, she says to Omega that she's not a prisoner, and it's kind of like,
I was just gonna say, and in episode 3, she says the same thing, and Crosshair's like, "Don't you mean her prison or her cell?"
Yeah, and it's, I mean, that whole twist at the end of season 2 was, again, I'm not happy with that. I'm just going to throw it out there because nowhere has it ever been said that there was female clones. I guess that's kind of on me for not thinking open-mindedly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, unless it's been sort of shown in sort of Attack of the Clones when the clones were being made, they were all males because they were all based on Jango. Yeah, and even down to Boba, being an unaltered clone. Then we've got Omega, which as another unaltered clone made no sense to me because it was just sort of bringing. It was almost like bringing in a female character for the sake of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, but I mean, just for the sake of continuity and consistency and science, like it just doesn't make sense. But I mean, we're kind of accepting of it with Omega, but now they're throwing in another character, and it's like, how far are we going to go with this?
It goes back.
No hate at all.
No, none at all. None at all. And I'm not going to lie. I was not expecting that twist at the end of season 2. And it shocked me because it was like, oh, wow. Like, is this going to be a character that we can potentially see helping Omega? And in episodes 1 and 3, we can systematically say no.
Yeah, because you kind of feel like she'd be very sympathetic to her. And just on another note, it's like maybe the simulations that we saw, like with Obi-Wan walking through the facility, maybe it's just like those simulations were mainly for training for the army, and maybe these female altered clones are more go back to like World War II, which a lot of Star Wars is built upon, with like not the Empire being the Nazis and whatnot. Maybe they're kind of keeping the role of like, okay, the female clones are more like the nurses and scientists that are behind the scenes that treat the soldier, and they're probably not mass produced like the regular clones.
Yeah.
And so we don't see them as much in Clone Wars or any of that, just because it wasn't necessary to the story until now.
Yeah, and I think that is a good way to consider it without it ruining sort of, like you say, Star Wars continuity.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Emery is not a nice sister to Omega.
She has her moments, but yeah. I wouldn't say at all. She does do one nice thing for her, but it is funny to go back on the prisoner thing, because I did write down, it's like, it's funny how they keep her locked up and have the audacity to say she's not a prisoner. It's like, I'm like, okay, she's not a prisoner in the Crosshair sense, but she's also not free to leave.
Yeah.
But she does have free roam of the facility, or at least in the corridors or the section she's in. So she's not confined too much.
Yeah, 'cause she is there to sort of weirdly work. And that's working in the actual physical sense, because she is doing manual labor.
Probably what she did back in Kaminoa.
Yeah. Because obviously we've got one of the last Kaminoans, I guess is would be the right thing to say.
Kaminoan, yeah, now let's say.
Yeah. And she is also a prisoner, but she's also there working.
Yeah, and Omega's presence is a little bit more prominent only because they're using her blood to test. And they think her blood is failing, so that's why they give her those tasks and daily routines like a normal worker.
Yeah. Only difference is they're not actually testing her blood, because Nala says destroying it.
Yeah.
Which I thought, I thought that was the first sort of hint that something was going to happen. And then that's where it started getting my head, going into, okay, I'm formulating how this is going to end. So yeah, it's again, it's more character development on the side of Omega's still trying to be helpful and kind and caring, even though she's clearly locked up. And I will admit, again, that I'm actually beginning to slightly like Omega at the moment.
Hey, look who's coming around. I'm not gonna lie, Ahsoka annoyed the heck out of me, like in the very beginning too. And it wasn't until the later seasons when they actually went through that character development. It's like, yeah, they're meant to be annoying in the beginning, but the character develops and becomes more likable by the end. Like, Ahsoka's one of my favorite characters now.
You see, I liked Ahsoka sort of from the get-go, because she was that interesting in between of Obi-Wan and Anakin.
No, the moment she said Sky Guy, I was like, I'm done with you.
See, I just found that funny, because
I find it funny now.
Yeah. I mean, I just think with Omega, she was just too. I think she was just too optimistic in everything, and then too reliant on Hunter when things went wrong. And I think
that's fair.
That's the thing that always annoyed me, was it was like in every episode where there was an issue, it would come up to being like, Hunter, save me. And it was kind of like almost like the damsel in distress when there was no real need for it.
And I do, because she put herself damsel in distress on her own. Because that was one thing that did annoy me in the first couple of seasons, is that Omega, stay put. And then she'd go and get involved and put herself as it's something that they'd have to go and save now. It's like, oh, we would have been successful, but now we got to go save her, which is making things more complicated than it needs to.
Yeah, yeah, and I genuinely think that is why I didn't like Omega as a character. You know, the whole like she's a female clone thing. I was fine with that because, again, you know, like you said with the World War II analogy, it makes sense. And even though, you know, we didn't see any on screen up until this point, I mean, come on, you know, there must have been some female clones for some, you know, for some reason. You could make it make sense.
Yeah.
It was just the helplessness, and now seeing her in an environment where she hasn't got Hunter or Wrecker to save her, it makes the character of Omega come out more in a positive way.
Yeah, because even Nala Se is a character that you've seen before, and now you can look at her now and you can see how worn down and hopeless she feels. And so
Yeah.
not only is Omega helping Crosshair try and see the light at the end of the tunnel, she's also trying to do that for Nala Se as well. And she doesn't even know what Nala Se is doing for her.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the first time we see Omega realize what Nala Se's doing is when she catches Nala Se destroying the blood.
Yeah. She's like, yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, right, okay, so there is an actual thing that's happening here.
Yeah, because she's like, why throwing out my blood? She's like, don't worry about it. Yeah, it's just very interesting just to see how these characters interact with each other. Like Omega is definitely growing a lot, and we even see Nala Se is like growing as well, and it's cool to kind of see how much these characters learn to care for each other, and because like later on we found out that Omega realizes, oh, Nala Se is there, or Omega's only there to keep Nala Se in line.
Yeah.
And so if anything happens to Omega, then that means Nala Se is not going to be cooperating very well, and that puts her in danger. And then even in episode 3, we see Nala Se make a selfless decision and continues to make these decisions that affect the outcome of things, even against their own well-being.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to what we've said in sort of previous episodes of even like Andor and Ahsoka, where we're feeling things for characters that we would never have really felt. You know, like.
And I'm going to say one more thing on Nala Se. Like, I have noticed, and it's very interesting, if you're not part of the Empire, they don't treat you very well. It's like they're just using Nala Se. They don't really consider her part of the Empire. She's just a tool being used, and they don't treat her very well, as if she were a trooper. Not saying that they get treated great either, but they're treated a lot better. And so we see that a lot of the scientists in other projects, like even in Mando, I forget his name, the cloning scientist that Grand Moff Gideon uses for Grogu. That guy's even treated poorly.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess because Nala Se is a reluctant scientist. There, it's not like she openly signed up to be part of the Empire.
Yeah, threatened and abused.
Yeah, so she's kind of trying to do her best with the situation that she's been put in. And you are right. It definitely shows sort of on how the character's acting and the interactions that they're having. But it's kind of also parallel to when the Empire was on Cloud City in Empire. Lando was very much open to sort of helping the Empire get what they want, and he's treated horribly.
And it's funny that the Empire would understand or at least realize that, because every time that happens, it destroys a bit of the loyalty there. Because like Nala Se makes some disloyal choices. The scientist in Mandalorian becomes disloyal, and then even with Lando, it's like, probably don't alter the deal any further. And he's like, whoa, okay, all right, things, you're not treating me well. All right, I'm gonna get these guys out of here. I'm gonna go against you. And so it's very interesting. You'd think the Empire would realize this and fix it at some point.
Yeah. But we all know that the Empire doesn't really learn, because their first Death Star blown up. So what do? They make a bigger one, which then gets blown up.
Which I find interesting, because it took from the Clone Wars up until A New Hope for the first one to be completely finished. And then just in a matter of like a year or two, the second Death Star is half finished.
I think
So
I read somewhere just on that one, as we digress, because that's what we do.
yeah.
I think they'd already started building the second one anyway.
So they had two.
Yeah, I think their plan was to sort of have an eventual fleet of them.
Okay, I'll accept that.
And have them stationed in different sectors of the galaxy as a way to definitely keep people in line.
Fear rules.
Yeah.
It's like, Palpatine, earn their respect. They'll be 100 times loyal to you more than fear would. But hey, I guess fear works.
Yeah, I mean, if I open the curtains and see a big space station of death above above the Earth, I'll be like, yeah, I'm behaving. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, Omega must be bored out of her mind. Like, she's not really loyal to the Empire either, and it doesn't really seem like she fears them the way that she should. And it might be just because of where she's at. She's like, it's just a boring same day routine. Wake up, get blood sample, do some tasks, feed the animals, and then go back to my cell and stare out the window until the next day. But at least she had a good view.
Yeah.
I don't know if you paid attention to that either. But I was like,
No,
man, she's got a really good view for her cell.
I did pay attention to that, and it kind of made me think back to what Emery said about you're not a prisoner. It kind of felt like they gave her that view to make it feel like less of a prison. It's like, that's the view that's out there, but you're stuck in here. But that's the nice view. You've got, like, it's like when you book a hotel room and it's beachfront view or a supermarket on the other side. You got the nicer view. You've been upgraded.
Yeah. Welcome to the prisoner suite.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and
no,
but I mean, but she still has like checks from the commandos. They come in and check her stuff too. It's like, okay, you're not a prisoner, but you got bars on your window. You have to stay in here till morning until we come unlock the door and let you out. And by the way, we're gonna do surprise inspections on all of your items. Like, they won't even let her keep a freaking doll.
Yeah, and that made me sort of realize how bad the Empire is, because 1 minute they're saying you're not a prisoner, to then the next being surprise room inspection. You're not allowed anything in here. What are you doing with this? It's like,
Yeah.
If you're going to say she's not a prisoner, at least pretend
Make her feel like it.
not. Yeah, sort of make her more cooperative.
And that's why when I said about Emery earlier, I was like, Emery's not at all the time. Like, she did do one good deed and give the doll back later on.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, maybe Emery is a friendly here, but we learn not entirely.
Yeah.
I
think, I mean, it's kind of obvious now that Emery's there to do a job.
Yeah.
She signed up to the Empire.
The chip is still functioning in her, like, for that purpose of scientific research.
Yeah. So she's, that's what she's gonna do. She's just gonna do her job.
Mm-hmm. At all costs. But some things get very more interesting with Omega, and I'm wondering if they do this on purpose, or what are they doing with those beasts? And I guess I see what it is. They treat those beasts that Omega is going to feed, like Batcher.
Yeah.
And she sees Batcher's harmed, and the droid's like, "Oh yeah, that one's due to be terminated unless it heals." And I was like, how the heck did that animal get hurt in its own cells? So they must be like going in, beating it, or doing some illegal animal fights, and it got injured.
It's the Empire, though. It wouldn't put it, it wouldn't surprise me if they were going in and sort of either torturing the animals as well, or
make them more vicious and more like, I want to say weapons.
Yeah.
And obviously Batcher got injured, so they're like, okay, you're no longer useful, so we're just gonna kill you. Even though Omega heals the creature.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if they're killing it on purpose. It's like, okay, Omega is attached to this creature, so let's make her time here even more worse. Put her in a cell, take her dolls, and kill her favorite animal.
That is the impression that I got from watching the episode, was they kind of realized that there is an attachment to Batcher, and they don't want attachments. Can't be having friends. So I think, even though Batcher was well on the mend, because Omega had got that sort of, I guess friendship would be the right word to say.
Yeah.
Or, friendship and trust. That
even though Crosshair tells her, don't be too trusting, not every clone is your friend.
Yeah. It's all parallels. The more I think about it, it is parallels in what they're saying. Because Crosshair is right. You can't trust anyone, really.
Yeah, and it's very interesting on his whole mindset, and it's really nice that Omega still like goes and visits him. But it's funny, even after all that he's been stuck down there, he's refusing to be her friend, even though she's trying to befriend this wounded animal, and then Crosshair would be wounded in a sense as well, and she's trying to heal him as well. So there's your parallel there, healing a wounded soldier and a wounded animal. I don't know why I put a D in there. Anyways, but it's funny how Crosshair is just like, forget the animal, and do you remember what your primary objective is? Yeah, it's to escape. Then forget everything, even me, and get out of here. Like, complete your objective. And it's like, Crosshair, you gotta stop thinking like that. It's like he's still in the lingo of his soldier and hasn't really given into his individuality yet. And I think that's where Omega comes in, is she's kind of restoring his humanity and changing him from his emotionless self and starting to feel emotion.
Yeah, see, I would say that Omega is Crosshair's humanity.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I think, like, even since season 1, she's been that nagging voice in his ear saying, do the right thing, do the right thing. And he's like, no. He's like, this is who I am. And I actually kind of agree with that. That makes sense.
I hate the fact that I'm going to have to rewatch seasons 1 and 2, and I might be going into them with a completely different perspective on Omega, and I might end up liking her from the start. What have you done to me?
Giving you some valid points to think about.
Yes, yeah. But no, I mean, it is an interesting one to think about, that Crosshair's never really had humanity in him, because
He's
he
a clone
was always,
trooper.
yeah, a good soldier always follows orders. Whereas Omega, because she wasn't restrained by any inhibitor chips or anything, she became the almost breath of fresh air that Crosshair needed.
Mm-hmm.
And that dynamic now is more on show, where Crosshair does say, just forget me, and Omega's like, no, we are getting out of this.
And he's like, oh, there's no we. What are you talking about? But I've been saying it since season 1. I've always seen that there's going to be some connection between Omega and Crosshair, and it's becoming more prominent now. But because she even refuses to go without Crosshair, and you can see he's still fighting what he wants to say to Omega. He's like, don't give me hope. You just get out of here. I'm stuck here. Like, he's refusing to give in to hope.
Yeah, I have just thought of an interesting twist, which might again play into how I think the finale is going to go. But
Okay.
I'm wondering if Omega is a clone of Crosshair. Because obviously, we said it in the last episode that Django's blood can only go so far, and that they were using other clones' blood to, for the experiments, which we see in these episodes in 1 and 3. And I am wondering if Omega is a clone of Crosshair, and that's where we get the dynamic from, that she kind of completes him as a character. She gives that humanity.
I like that theory, but she's the same age as Boba. So I think it was from the beginning. I think she's a direct clone from Django.
Is she the same age as Boba?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Put holes in my theories.
I'm sorry. I like that theory, but considering she's unaltered and she ages normally, she's the same age as Boba, and Crosshair would have been created after her.
Yeah, actually, yeah. No, that's a fair point. I keep forgetting how old Boba is in and timelines as to when events are happening.
And I think they do say in the first season that she's that's why they're after her, is because she's not a watered down bloodline. But a very interesting theory. That would have been a really good theory. I like the sound of it, but I mean, they're all from the same blood, so I mean, they kind of all complete each other in some sense.
Yeah.
And then for the end of the first episode, I had something very interesting that I found, And it's funny how Hemlock tries to manipulate Omega and trying to make her think she's just like them, because she finds out that they're going to kill the animal anyways, even after it's healed. And so she releases it. And Hemlock's like, good job. Like, you thought you were going to save this animal, but you've domesticated it by being its friend. And that's what's ultimately going to kill it out there. It's like, it's either we killed it or now you just send it to its death out there. And I think that's why they kind of put Badger in there as well, because now that I'm thinking about it, because even in episode 3, so I could be wrong on this, and it kind of changes what I think about her and Crosshair at the end. I think Crosshair and her will survive, only because Hemlock tells her, it's like, oh yeah, you just released a domesticated animal into a forest full of things that will kill it. And Crosshair's kind of the same thing. Like, he's a soldier who's been domesticated by Omega's love. And they're going to get released and freed. And so he's not going to be as much of a soldier as he was, just like that animal isn't. But at the end of episode 3, Batcher survives and comes along with them. And so maybe Batcher's the parallel to Crosshair.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're doing some foreshadowing with that, or if that's just something they just went with for this couple episodes.
The more as you was explaining that, all I was thinking was, oh, just wait until I tell you how I think it's going to end. Honestly.
Oh, I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Don't let me change your thoughts yet. I really want to hear what you think, because I mean, right now it's just all theories, and like I said, guys, we're recording this right when they came out, so we have no idea what's going to happen, and we did that on purpose.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll go through sort of the key events of episode 3, and then I'll, especially with sort of how episode 3 ends, then I'll explain my theory.
That's fair. And just to tie up episode 1 so we can jump into the 3rd episode, because there's a lot to talk about there too. It's kind of interesting how they ended it with the blood samples on this little turntable thing.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how what's being tested, because it looks like it's dropping something into it. So I don't know if that's whose blood that is, or if it's just strictly clone blood.
See, I thought at the end of episode 1, seeing that it must have been the Emperor's blood.
That's what I was thinking too, because they're trying to see if it matches and works.
Yeah, because obviously, with episode 9, we know that the Emperor cloned himself.
Yeah.
So my thought was, okay, so this is kind of tying in with that more so.
And that's why I tell everybody that's wishing that the sequels, or saying that they're trying to get rid of the sequels part of the timeline. I'm going to say this right here is solidifying it and giving purpose of why or how Palpatine returned. I think they're doing a lot to say, take that one line from Rise of Skywalker, somehow Palpatine has returned. And okay, we're going to give you the development. So now there's a lot of, if you watch this before you watch the sequels, there's foreshadowing here.
Yeah.
Because we get a surprise visitor. And not only a surprise visitor, a surprise voicing on Mr. Palpatine himself.
Yeah.
Because we're used to Sam Witwer, who did did Rebels, I believe, and then Ian Abercrombie did the Clone Wars movie and the animated Clone Wars show. And here we get Ian McDiarmid back And because when he first spoke on this episode, I was like, oh, man, I don't remember him sounding that menacing in Clone Wars. And so I had to look it up, and it was Ian McDermott. I'm like, I knew I recognized the voice.
Yeah,
Because his delivery, so chilling, so chilling.
It really, because like you say, we've had, the 3 different actors, or voice actors now.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I know that voice, and it's not the one that I'm used to. And I Googled it as well, and I was like, oh, no way! Like, that's why it sounds so chilling.
And that's why I had to Google it, because I didn't think that he would have come back. I mean, it's just like James Earl Jones coming back for Rebels and doing Vader's voicing. And so it's just really cool to see Palpatine himself coming back to do the animated version. It's like, oh man, this is what I've been needing. And him being a guest at this facility gave a little bit more prominence of what they're doing is so important that even the Emperor himself comes to check on it. Like, I never really expected Palpatine to really leave Coruscant too often. The only time that we've seen him leave outside of the Clone Wars, like him being Palpatine, but him as being Emperor, like the only time we've seen him is the second Death Star.
Yeah.
So I just kind of assumed he just kind of chilled on Coruscant, didn't really go anywhere. But I mean, it makes sense that he would go intimidate, or at least go take a look at his most prized experiments.
Yeah,
because
there was a hint of something as well, which I kind of want to go into later on, which ties into Mandalorian, I think.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, because Omega's going about her normal day, not realizing that they've got the head of the Empire walking around their facility, but Nala Say has some knowledge of what's going on, because she comes in with Hemlock while Emery and Omega are having their little blood sample testing, and Nala Say goes up to the thing and she's like, "You have to leave today." She's like, "They're not letting me test your blood today, so I can't throw your sample out, because once if Emery tests your sample, you're in grave danger. So you need to get out of here now."
Yeah, and that kind of made me realize that Nala Say definitely knows more than she's able to let on about why Omega's so special.
And that's why she's been throwing out the samples, because she knows what it'll mean if she gives a working sample.
Yeah.
And this is what I was talking about, Nala Say having a change of heart later, because now she knows Omega is what's going to keep her alive. But now she's giving up that lifeline right there. Because what's going to happen to Nala Say when Omega's gone?
Yeah. It's not going to look good for her either, is it?
Not at all. And it's a funny thing later, because they do escape, and it's very interesting that Hemlock kind of accuses her, and she's like, "What are you talking about? I've been with you the whole time. How did I help her escape?"
I did like that, that sort of almost sassiness that came out. If Kaminoans can be sassy, I guess, but it definitely came across as like, dude, like, I've been right next to you. How can I do anything? And it kind of showed the somewhat short-sightedness or oversightedness of Hemlock. He had the Emperor himself visit the facility, and it almost felt like he let that go to his head.
Hey, I'm just hearing casting at this point. It's like they're so confident with themselves that they would never conceive that anybody would do anything such as this.
Again with the parallels.
Especially with how heavily guarded this place is. No, I even put down here, like I was looking at it's like, oh, another Prison Break episode. I'm like, who did it best?
Actually,
But
that's an interesting one. Who did the Prison Break the best?
I'm gonna say there was more suspense in this one. Because now we got Crosshair free. And we got Omega running around. You got heavy security, especially clone commandos.
Yeah.
And Palpatine himself, who's so in tune with the dark side that it's like, but he's so focused on one thing that he's not expecting any threats. And I mean, the threat wasn't against him anyway, so he's not going to feel a threat in the Force anyways.
Yeah.
But like the music and everything, so suspenseful.
Yeah, I think that for an animated series, this did the Prison Break episode better than Andor, and I liked the Andor Prison Break.
So and I mean, it's there's only so much you can do live action.
Yeah,
and there's things you can do in the animated that can make things a little bit better. So for live action Prison Break with Andor, solid piece. Yeah. But they did really good with the music, the interactions with the characters, and I think bringing Palpatine is what really drove it for me. It's like you have the audacity to try and escape while you got a Sith Lord running around the facility.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the difference between the two Prison Breaks is simply summed up as the prison that Andor was on was run by, I mean, so you might as well just say it's basic security. They weren't stormtroopers, they weren't clones. They were just, they were people at the end of the day.
Yeah, their security was just an illusion.
Yeah. Here, it's like you say, it's right under the nose of the Emperor himself.
And it's visible security.
Yeah.
And not just security, clone commanders or commandos. And then not to mention at the very beginning of the episode of 3, we see this weird masked character in like this black suit as Crosshair and the other troopers are being escorted. They didn't really do much with him. He just stood there ominous.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that. Do you know who that is?
No clue.
See, I'm thinking either, and it's
Inquisitor.
I'm thinking Ventress. She was shown in the trailer.
Oh, dude, that makes sense because the armor was similar.
Yeah, she could be potentially the one that has to go after Crosshair and Omega.
Maybe she knows what's going on with the Emperor, and maybe she's trying to get there to get Omega out of there to prevent what's going to happen. And this also just reminded me as well. And I'll say it at the end because I have a slightly changed of my theory now. Ooh. Considering events in the movies. So, but I think you're right. That might be Asajj Ventress.
Yeah.
So we might see her sooner than later.
If it is Ventress, I am going to be so annoyed that they ruined it by putting her in the trailer. Because for me, that should then be one of those twists that you don't see coming because essentially you think that she's dead.
Yeah, but I mean, with the amount of hype that Bad Batch has had, they had to give you something that would make you watch it. Not saying that people wouldn't watch it anyways, but it'd bring a lot more Clone Wars fans that fell out in the first couple seasons.
True.
Otherwise, I don't think they would have done it.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's very interesting. I'm actually pretty excited. But if they didn't put her in the trailer and we saw this character, we're like, who is that? And then shows up later, because at this point she's supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
So it would have been a huge twist. She's still alive. How'd she survive? So very interesting. And it's very bold. Continuing, because now that we got Crosshair out of his cell, and he's very anxious and nervous knowing that Palpatine is there, because he's like, Palpatine's here? She's like, I don't know. But if he is here, let's steal his ship, because everything else is grounded. And Crosshair's like, no, we're not doing that. He's like, even that's going to be too heavily guarded for me.
Yeah,
and
it kind of comes back to, now that Crosshair's free from the prison, or from his cell, it's kind of like his mind has been set free as well. And the Crosshair that, we saw at the beginning of season 1 is coming back, where it's actually, he's more logical. He's calculating things as he's going along.
And now he's openly against the Empire.
Yeah.
So it is really cool to see Crosshair like gone from that hopeless character, and now that he's free, he's like, okay, maybe Omega's onto something. Maybe we can get out of here. And so he's even skeptical about the ship that's downed in the jungle, which we're coming back to, the one that it was like where it's going to play into its effect, is that downed shuttle. Omega's been around enough people to hear about it, so she knows it's out there, and it's like, oh, it's got a comm system. We can just call Hunter, and they'll come get us if we can't escape in an actual shuttle. And so they decide to, which is very smart, because every entrance and exit must be guarded well, that they decide that they're going to go through the animal pen, because they can release the hounds through the little ray shield tunnel that they got going on there.
Yeah.
And then this is where we see Emery not being so friendly.
Yeah, that was I would say that was a twist that I wasn't expecting, but I think
I was thinking she was going to let her free, but I was like, oh, come on.
I think that would have been more of the twist that I was going to expect, was, that Emery would turn up and be like, guys, come this way, secret tunnel type thing. But
right.
I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, me too, because it's just such an obvious thing or overdone thing. It's like, I'm going to free you. Let's go this way. It's like, no. I'm sticking to my programming. It's like, what are you guys doing? This is for your own good. I'm going to alert the guards. And Crosshair just stuns her and drops her, but too late. Time to get out of here.
Yeah. But again, it's good to see Crosshair coming back as, as the Crosshairs that we saw in season 1.
Mm-mm.
The one that, yeah, but
it's the same Crosshair, but he has purpose now. He knows who he is and what he needs to do now, and it's not join the Empire.
Yeah, and that's why I keep saying, the season 1, like the beginning of season 1 version, before he leaves the Bad Batch.
Yeah, but I knew this was gonna. I knew from season 1 this is where he was headed.
Yeah,
I knew he was gonna have a redemption story, and that one was obvious. But I like how they did it. He didn't redeem himself on his own. He had to go through that dark time. He had to go through that soul searching to really end up where he finally learns who he is and where he belongs.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to go through that. Sometimes you gotta go against your. You have to find. You have to go against what you believe and focus on that, and then kind of see if it works or not. And it didn't work well for him. But it's cool seeing them escape because I don't think they're gonna have it. They didn't have it as easy as Cassian. Cassian was able to hide around a little bit. Even with two of them, they hit on a cliff and didn't get caught. And then here we have these guys running through a jungle with a lot of shelter and a lot of things to block the ships from seeing them from above. And I'd have to say they got lucky with that creature being out there to deflect the hounds that were chasing them.
Yeah, I mean, the whole escape for me flowed naturally as well. Like I know that with Andor, to sort of make the parallel with that, you know, that also flowed because that was a whole episode, and this was also more or less the whole episode of them essentially escaping. And yeah, there were kind of issues in the way for both, or in both series, but this just weirdly worked better. And then obviously seeing Batcher return to help save the day.
That was cool.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Again, for some reason
I sort of was, but I was kind of hoping that Hemlock was right, not in kind of being a mean way, but I figured if Omega was wrong for setting the beast free and Hemlock was right, it might have changed her character from being so positive and kind of bring it down a little bit. But I don't think that's where they're going to go with the character. I think they're going to always keep her hopeful.
Yeah, up until the final episode, which I really want to get into.
We're almost there. We're almost there.
Almost there. Okay. I can wait. I can do it.
But this is also, I was going to say, but this is also where you see the character development for Omega from being that helpless little girl in a facility and then escaping with the Bad Batch and learning from them and throughout their entire time together. Because Crosshair's like, do you know what Plan 72 is? She's like, yeah, Tech made me remember every plan. She made me memorize every single plan. He's like, okay. He's like, that sounds like Tech, but all right, cool. This is what we're going to do. And they couldn't take this down shuttle because it was completely destroyed. But I thought it was very clever on how they made themselves feel like even though there's two of them, they'd shoot and move location and confuse the troopers enough to where they steal the troopers' ship without them even thinking that was what they're going to do. Very bold of them.
Yeah. And it kind of shows the synergy that both Omega and Crosshair have. And I know that I've said sort of in this episode already that Omega is kind of like she is the humanity side of Crosshairs, and it's
the yin and yang.
Yeah, and it's
which actually kind of works because she's got the white hair, the white clothing, and he's generally always wearing black.
Yeah. Again, it's that interesting parallel, and seeing how they eventually do work together. Again, it is like yin and yang, where it's almost like you can't have one without the other in one way, shape, or form. And and there's always the good in the bad and the bad in the good.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where her character develops as well, because she's better with the blaster. She's not relying on Crosshair to keep her alive. They're relying on each other.
Yeah.
And especially when he jumps in the ship, they switch roles from her being the pilot. She gets back and starts shooting all the troopers down while he takes control of the ship and gets them out of there. And then she eventually flies it out of there, and they're trying to shoot her down until a special little blood sample gives a green light.
Yep.
And Hemlock tells everybody to stand down, and it's very interesting because he's like, we got the full resources of the Empire. We will find them. And that's probably where the rest of the season's going. But before we jump into the final stuff, I do want to talk about some of the Palpatine stuff, because I know we brushed on that. But there's some interesting things, because Nala Se, when she's talking to Omega, she mentions the word project, and then she gets cut off. And then I was like, what project is she talking about? Then Palpatine's like, I'm here for inspection, but I'm here for a different reason. And we find out it's Project Necromancer.
And this is exactly what I wanted to say earlier as well. Is
okay.
It was first talked about in, I think it was Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Which is obviously the whole reason why they were trying to get Grogu. So it's an interesting tie-in to not only that, but obviously episode 9 as well, where now we kind of see how far back Palpatine's been planning everything.
Yeah. So does that mean Grogu is a clone then, if they're more willing to go after Grogu than the Jedi that are still alive and running around? Side note for a later discussion, but something to think about.
You've just killed my brain, because I'm now thinking, wait, okay, that might be a thing.
Or Luke's just too powerful to go against, and Grogu's an easier target.
Well, I mean, thing is, it's like they could have easily got a blood sample of Yoda from at any point in Yoda's life and just kept it on ice.
Yeah.
And then created Grogu. I don't know who would have created Grogu, because, Kamino was the main cloning planet.
Or here's an interesting thought. So going back to Clone Wars, we know Yoda sees the future and how everything goes down, right?
Yeah.
What if Yoda has his own Project Necromancer and didn't tell anybody about it, and that's why Grogu is being protected so much? So maybe Grogu is a clone of Yoda. Because Yoda and Palpatine are the yin and yang of the galaxy.
Yeah. That would be...
Fun little theory.
Interesting twist for the movie as well.
Yeah. It's a little stretch, but it's fun. It's fun to throw some crazy theories out there. I'm not sure how much I'm believing my own theory, but it's a fun thought.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be
Project Necromancer.
Yeah, that was. I again, I know I've already said it, but it's like it makes me wonder how far in advance Palpatine had planned everything. Because obviously, again, Attack of the Clones, we see the plans for the Death Star. So we know that that's already a thing that's going to be happening.
Well, I don't know if they might have solidified it in canon, but I do know in Legends, Palpatine was so strong in the Force that he was very good with foresight. That's why he was so hard to strategize against, is because he already saw everything and it knew how it was going to play out. And that's why Luke was kind of a little bit of a wrench in his plans, because you can see in the future, but doesn't mean it's going to come true, or there might be some like parts that are out. And Palpatine was trying his hardest to plan every detail out. And this is like one of the things. And so maybe he did see Luke defeat him, and that's why he's doing Project Necromancer. He's like, okay, well, I may fall there, but I'm coming back.
That does make a lot of sense, because, I mean, one thing that always sort of bothered me about Revenge of the Sith was how Palpatine knew that Anakin was nice and crispy.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you can sense other Force users and everything, because we see it when Order 66 happens and Yoda feels it. But
Yeah.
it kind of always bothered me that Palpatine kind of knew basically exactly where Anakin would be.
Yeah.
And
He's
now
so strong in the Force, he saw it.
Yeah, that makes more sense now.
And again, paralleling to the Legends material, like a lot of people complain about Palpatine returning, but it very much so happened in the comics. Palpatine actually comes back as a clone of his own and turns Luke to the dark side and forces Leia to learn the Force to bring Luke back to the light side. And that's why and that's why Luke was such a big part of the Legends and why he was the most powerful Jedi, is because he was one of the few Jedi to go to the dark side and come back.
Yeah.
And knowing the dark side and the light side made him a lot more stronger and more powerful. So I like that they're doing the Project Necromancer, that they're kind of building up that storyline, because I was never bothered that Palpatine returned like a lot of people did, because I'm familiar with the Legends material. So I'm like, okay, they made sense. They just didn't do it right.
Yeah.
And so this is them going back and correcting it. And it's like, okay, all right. This, just like the Clone Wars made the prequels a lot stronger, I think stuff that they're doing now is going to make the sequels a lot more relatable or more likable once all the material's out. That's strong enough to build its case.
Yeah. And again, just on the Palpatine returning thing, I too agree. It was good that it happened. How it happened was a bit ropey in the films,
Mm-hmm.
but again, now that they're kind of retroactively filling in the gaps, it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. And while he was talking to Hemlock about what they're doing, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, there's got to be people in the Empire that would fight against this if they knew what was happening. And Dave Filoni, being one step ahead of me, actually addressed that issue, because as Palpatine's leaving, he's like, there are officers and troopers that would feel like this would be an abomination. They'd consider this an abomination. So keep it secret, keep it safe. If you get the reference.
I do get the reference.
I knew you would.
Yeah. It. I'm excited now to see, just on the Project Necromancer side, on how the other projects will handle it and sort of expand on the information of it.
And I'm pretty sure, like you said, like they started it in Mandalorian. I'm pretty sure that's like the start of it. And then they created the Bad Batch to give it more weight.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they did the Moff Gideon with the Force powers, to kind of show that clones can be cloned with Force abilities. Or, am I remember correct? Did he have Force abilities when he cloned himself in Mando?
No, I don't think so. Because I know he had the Beskar armor, which kind
He did. Why am I thinking there's some Force ability there? No, Mando wouldn't have been able to beat him then if he had Force abilities.
Yeah.
No, he did. He actually he did create Force sensitive clones of himself. Yeah, there was he was Force sensitive. He just wasn't trained.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, I remember something to do with Force ability, but I think it was his clones had it, but he didn't. And that's why people were arguing if Moff Gideon actually dead or not, or if that was one of its clones that was fighting Mando.
Yeah.
But I think he successfully created Force clones, but then they were all destroyed, and that's why he was freaking out.
Maybe that's why they needed Grogu. Because, like you said about the Luke connection, the Emperor's already been beaten by Luke. They probably wouldn't go after him again. But
yeah, Moff Gideon was terrified when he saw that X-wing show up at the end of season 2.
Yeah, but having Grogu, who's a young, untrained, Force-sensitive character, you could use that blood and create a whole load of Force-sensitive clones.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm ruining your theory now. There we go.
Just a little bit, but we're good. But okay, so that ends our discussion for these 2 episodes. Very cool. But before we end, we have some theories we got to hear.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you my altered theory real quick, because before you get into yours, because I'm excited and I know you're waiting. But I was thinking, Rise of Skywalker, Palpatine has successful clones.
Yeah.
And they mentioned he had multiple clones, and that's Rey's an offspring of one of those clones. So Omega and Crosshair escape, and they find one sample with her blood in it, very successful, and that's why they stopped from shooting the ship down. And Palpatine gave him the full resources of the Empire to make sure whatever needs to get done gets done to protect Project Necromancer. With that said, I think one of the theories that we discussed before, I think Omega gets captured at the end of the season, and that's it. Because they need more of her blood to make Palpatine's success later in The Rise of Skywalker. Unless they do something with Grogu and that changes, but I'm thinking everybody dies except for Omega, and Omega becomes a forever prisoner. Until the Empire's taken down, and then she's either dead by then or not around.
Yeah.
So Bad Batch season 3 might end on a very sad note.
Yeah.
No happy ending there.
That's kind of similar to my theory.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so I think end of the season we're going to have it's going to roughly play out in the same way that you've just said, where Omega's captured again and held prisoner. But I think the rest of the Bad Batch are going to go into to free her, Crosshair included. And I think one by one they're going to either sacrifice themselves in a way to help Omega escape. And I think the last 2 that will die is Crosshair and Omega, and I think it's going to be Crosshair sacrifices himself to save Omega, and then Omega sacrifices herself to stop everything else from happening. Because I think towards the end of the season we're going to find out, or Omega's going to find out, why the Empire wants her so much.
Yeah.
And then it'll be that sort of self-sacrifice thing to potentially stop anything bad from happening. So I think coming to the end of the season, we're not going to have any of the Bad Batch left at all.
Ooh, I like that theory too.
And
that's actually very cool.
I think either theory would play quite well, considering the darker tones that we're already seeing in the first 3 episodes.
Yeah. Because I'm wondering if they have enough of Omega's blood, or they find all the thrown away samples. maybe Nala say finally cracks and they never get Omega back, but they have enough samples from what Nala's thrown away to keep it.
Were they fully destroyed?
Oh, I actually don't know. I thought I'm just imagining in my head that she was just throwing it into a trash can, but she might have actually burned it or something.
But then, I mean, the other thing on that one, though, is how much blood is necessarily needed to create a clone, a load of clones. I can't imagine it's going to be
just a vial.
I think that vial will be able to do a lot of clones. Because, I mean, if we look at Jango Fett, he was one guy, and look at all the clones that came from him.
That is true.
So I'm kind of thinking that one vial is going to be enough.
Ooh, interesting. Because Palpatine didn't need like a whole army of himself. He just needed enough to clone himself.
Yeah. And maybe that's where sort of like Omega's self-sacrifice comes into play, because they've already started creating some clones of Palpatine, but they're kind of failing akin to how Snoke looked. And because obviously we know the sort of how that now plays out.
Yeah.
And so the Empire does one final push to capture Omega. They capture her, and then before they can take any more of her blood, she does the self-sacrifice thing.
Ooh. I think you're onto something. I'm kind of hoping you're right now.
I'm interested for us to do the final episode of this season, because if I'm right, and we've recorded this now, then I think I might have special powers. I think I might be a Jedi.
It's actually funny. There's like some of the movies I predicted as well, and I'll have to dig them up out of the archives because I don't have them uploaded anymore. But it is funny because like I predicted some things about The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and came back and was talking to my friend about it, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, he's like, you have special powers," and especially with Rogue One, because I remember him and I were discussing. It's like we were doing the trailer for Rogue One, and I was like, he's like, "Dude," I'm like, honestly, I'm like, I would love to see a scene with Darth Vader where the rebels are running away from him, and then they run into a room, and it's completely dark, and then all you hear is breathing and a lightsaber turn on, and then everybody's screaming, and then Rogue One came out, and then they did that hallway scene. But that was just a fan's hope, because I was thinking that'd be a really cool scene, and it did not disappoint.
Yeah.
But very cool theory, and Bad Batch actually starting off really well this season, and I'm really hoping they keep that same momentum. I know there's only 15 episodes this season, so yeah, it's fun that we're recording as they come out, even though we're releasing this later, because it's fun to kind of like throw out real theories, because we wouldn't be able to do it if we waited until we decided to release this, and then we like kind of like with Andor, how we knew things were already happening. So here it's like fun to, it's like, nope, these are real theories, real speculations in real time. Yeah. So by the time you listen to this, you'll probably will either be wrong or they're just fun theories. So thanks guys for listening to us and being part of our podcast journey. We're going to go ahead and end it for today, but just remember, head down to the description below so you can have more Star Wars. You can check out past podcasts. You can check out our Instagram where we post a lot of fun stuff. You can check our Discord. You can talk about our podcasts or a lot of the theories that you have. Join the growing community that we have for Star Wars fans. And if you're looking for merch, we are affiliated with entertainmentearth.com. So check out some of the Black Series and lightsabers and some other cool stuff that we have through them. And if you like t-shirts, we have some cool designs that we've done ourselves. So give those a look. But we'll catch you guys next time. May the Force
be with you.
always